This is a world first, a quantum bit based on the nucleus of a single atom in silicon, making possible powerful quantum computers of the future. The nucleus is the core of the atom, just a millionth of its overall size. And what we've done here is to demonstrate that quantum information can be written onto the spin or magnetic orientation of the nucleus and then read out with very high accuracy.
Our work brings us one step closer to a fully functioning large-scale quantum computer. And our nuclear spin qubit sets a new benchmark for accuracy in solid-state devices. In existing computers, information is stored as a binary code of zeros and ones, called bits. In a quantum computer, however, these are called qubits, and we are using the spins of single atoms to store this qubit code. Our nuclear spin qubit rivals what many consider to be the best quantum bit today, that of an atom in an electromagnetic trap stored in a vacuum. That technology won last year's Nobel Prize for Physics.
Last September, our team reported in Nature magazine the world's first quantum bit based on a single atom in a silicon chip. There we were able to read and write information to the spin of its electron and read it back out again at a later time. With this latest result, also published in Nature, we've been able to dig even deeper into the atomic structure in order to read and manipulate the spin of the nucleus, the core of the atom. This means that it's more challenging to measure, but it's almost completely immune to disturbances from the outside world, and that makes it an exceptional quantum bit.
And all this was done in silicon, which is the material used to store information in your computer and your mobile phone. What this means is that our qubit is compatible with the standard industry technology, and so we're confident that our single atom, single nucleus quantum bits can be put into production one day.
A classical computer performs operations using classical bits, which can be either 0 or 1. Now, in contrast, a quantum computer uses quantum bits, or qubits, and they can be both 0 and 1 at the same time. And it is this that gives a quantum computer its superior computing power. There are a number of physical objects that can be used as a qubit: a single photon, a nucleus, or an electron. I met up with researchers who are using the outermost electron in phosphorus as a qubit. But how does that work? Well, all electrons have magnetic fields, so they're basically like tiny bar magnets. And this property is called spin. If you place them in a magnetic field, they will align with that field, just like a compass needle lines up with the magnetic field of the Earth. Now, this is the lowest energy state, so you could call it the 0 state, or we call it, for the electron, spin down. Now, you can put it in a 1 state or spin up, but that takes some energy. Now, so far, this is basically just like a classical bit. It's got 2 states, spin up and spin down, which are like the classical 1 and 0. But the funny thing about quantum objects is that they can be in both states at once. Now, when you measure the spin, it will be either up or down. But before you measure it, the electron can exist in what's called a quantum superposition, where these coefficients indicate the relative probability of finding the electron in one state or the other. Now, it's hard to imagine how this enables the incredible computing power of quantum computers without considering 2 interacting quantum bits. Hello. Hi. Now, there are 4 possible states of these 2 electrons.
You could think that, well, that's just luck.
But there's a catch. Although the qubits can exist in any combination of states, when they are measured, they must fall into one of the basis states, and all the other information about the state before the measurement is lost.
That the number of transistors on the chip doubles over a certain time period, or the cost of the transistors halves.
But we now know today that there is a limit to how small you can shrink things, how many transistors you can cram onto a single chip.
So that's going to bound human capability for tackling certain problems. This machine offers an alternative.
And this might be considered the rebirth, maybe, of analog computing for solving certain kinds of problems.
Means that the system is in some mixture of the 1 state and the 0 state.
And as a result of that, when you have a string of these quantum bits, you get a multitude of possibilities. So if you have 2 quantum bits, you have 4 possibilities: 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1. Those all coexist. And a quantum computer can parallel process all these possibilities.
Most typically think of a computer as something we use to access the internet or to email a friend. However, that's an example of an electronic computer. We also have mechanical and biological computers. The necessary and sufficient components of any functional computer are memory for data storage, an executable program containing instructions for processing data, the processor, which executes the instructions, and the capability to produce meaningful output. Many components of cells are components of real biological computers, equivalent to the components of electronic computers. For instance, DNA and RNA can hold prescriptive information or algorithms, and proteins can be used to hold, transfer, or process data. Proteins are the output generated by the translation process of a ribosome's computer system. Scientists have also discovered something known as the interactome, which is an incredibly dynamic network used by the cell for internal communication. It's like the internet of the cell, where proteins, RNA, and DNA can stay in constant communication with each other. We also know there is a cell-to-cell exchange of information integrating our entire body. Well, in 2010, the noted microbiologist Craig Venter and his team accomplished an incredible feat, surpassing their previous accomplishment of determining the complete sequence of the human genome. They created the first computer-designed, synthetically produced genome, which is the set of application programs for an organism. This artificial DNA had over 1 million letters of genetic code that were then read, processed, and executed by the computer systems in the target cell's nucleus. Thanks to Venter, these biological computers are no longer theoretical. They are experimentally verified. In an interview, Venter stated, "Life is basically the result of an information process, a software process. Our genetic code is our software, and our cells are dynamically, constantly reading that genetic code." The cell is an extremely efficient and well-networked computer system with thousands or even millions of processors and billions of bits of information. Cells are the structural and functional units of all living organisms. Some organisms, such as bacteria, are unicellular, consisting of a single cell. Other organisms, like humans, are multicellular, having many cells. In fact, it's estimated that an adult human has over 100 trillion cells, and each cell is an amazing world of its own. It can take in nutrients, convert the nutrients into energy, carry out specific functions, and reproduce itself as necessary. Even more amazing is that each cell stores its own set of instructions for carrying out each of these activities. Deoxyribonucleic acid, or DNA, is a long polymer of nucleotides, each nucleotide being a deoxyribose sugar molecule, one phosphate group, and one base. Nucleotides are joined together to form the DNA backbone. A second DNA strand then joins the first to form a double helix. You may recognize the code letters A, C, G, and T, which are the 4 bases used in DNA. These bases are adenine, A, cytosine, C, guanine, G, and thymine, T. Like the code in Mr. Gates' software, the sequence of the 4 bases encodes genetic instructions used in the development and functioning of all known living organisms. Once organized, this information is what makes up the gene. And genes, as we all know, contain the recipes for the components of life. Genes hold all the information to build and maintain an organism's cells, and they also pass genetic traits to offspring. Human DNA contains an estimated 20 to 25,000 genes in its approximately 3 billion base pairs. A gene contains both coding sequences that determine what the gene does and non-coding sequences that determine when the gene is active, as well as thousands of other regulatory functions. Less than 2% of the genome is for coding proteins. The other 98%, which used to be thought of as junk DNA, is now being studied to determine its functionality.
Chemically, the DNA in the cells of my body is the same as that in a fruit fly, an orange, a hippo, an elephant. It's all the same chemically. The uniqueness to all of those species of living things lays in the information content of the DNA. So while the chemistry may be the same, the actual information that's embedded in that chemistry is very, very different. And the challenge for molecular biologists such as myself is understanding completely what that information means.